Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. We made it. We made it to the end of the season. This season of all seasons that we just pretty much wanted to finish. Honestly, for all of you that have made it through and are at this stage with me, I salute you. Honestly. What a slog. What an absolute slog it has been. And it finished off yesterday with all of those who made the trip up there. It was a long trip. It was a long trip back. I don't know, those of you who were on the train back with me, I think it was maybe the last train back to King's Cross, I think. Certainly the last train that got me back home anyway. Stuck on the train tracks for an hour, about 45 minutes after it left because of some problems along the way. It was pretty much fitting that there were kind of issues in the direction it was taking. Very apt, and just we made it. We made it. It wasn't the season we wanted. It wasn't the destination we wanted. It was a complete horror show for much of it, but we got to the end of it. We survived. That's the main thing. And today we not all quite awoke to the news, but were treated to the news, treated that in a strange parallel universe, it feels like 4 years ago we were at a Champions League final in Madrid with a certain Argentine at the helm. And a couple of years before that, the big Battle of the Bridge, where things did not quite go as Spurs want, with a certain Argentine in charge. And now that certain Argentine is the manager of Chelsea. It's strange. It's not good. It was made very odd viewing. I noticed that they very much, it wasn't let's have him holding the shirt yet. That will come presumably, unless that happens in the meantime while I'm doing this. But yeah, it's one of those. I'm watching seeing the various reactions unfold. I knew the time it was being announced, so it was essentially a bit like a countdown to chaos. Yeah, the ranging of emotions from people that are disgusted that he's gone there, people that are disgusted that Spurs allowed it to happen, people that are just disgusted all round, people that are now just completely ambivalent to it all and just can't be bothered with football or anything to do with Tottenham Hotspur right now. I feel like I'm somewhere in the middle. I absolutely understand that if Spurs are not going to go for him, he has every right to take another job, and that is one of the most attractive, if not the most attractive out there, because of the money that's going to be thrown at whoever takes that job. I also admit to being a little bit disappointed that he's gone there, of course, because, you know, this is the manager of Tottenham Hotspur that has said so many nice things about Tottenham Hotspur, who has professed his love for Tottenham Hotspur and has talked about the rivals in the past, including Chelsea at one point. I'm sure it was more of a way of winding up Arsenal, but said that they were bigger rivals than Arsenal at one point. And here he is managing Chelsea. It's going to be a very weird sight. It's going to be, very strange. Seeing him in the away dugout at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium and in the home one at Stamford Bridge. I'm still not entirely sure how it's going to go. I don't know. I do think his PSG experience will have helped him in terms of managing a different kind of club. But I'm still not entirely sure project manager types work at Chelsea. But we'll find out. I did think it was interesting that his contract was 2 years with an option of a third, rather than the big old long-term things that have been handed out in the past. Maybe that's just Chelsea learning from previous mistakes rather than a reflection on him. But I did think that was interesting when I saw that. That was after a long day to finish everything off, to kind of see that today, and we kind of knew it was coming today. By all means, let me know your comments underneath. Be intrigued to see where people are at with it, and which camp they fall into, whether it's I've seen some people go, he's a snake, and like really kind of getting quite extreme about it, and I've seen people saying, blaming it all on Levy, the club, Enoch, whoever you want to call it, the board, for not ever making that phone call to him, which it is bewildering that he was never sounded out, definitely. But there you go. And obviously, like I said, there's some people that just don't really care either way. And there's some people, actually, I've noticed that kind of both, that can be unhappy at the club, but also annoyed at him for going there. So, yeah, it's one of those. It's difficult because obviously I've got that side of me that doesn't like the idea of it. It's difficult to see, of course. You know, I grew up a Spurs fan, and when a Spurs manager, it's very strange that it's a Spurs manager going to Chelsea rather than the other way around. That's obviously a little bit different. So I think the last Spurs to Chelsea, was it Frank Arneson? Unless I'm missing someone really obvious. But the professional side of me, and also one that had a very good relationship with Poch, and got on very well with him and his staff as well. It's really difficult because you kind of want to wish them the best, but obviously in terms of Tottenham, you probably don't want their local rivals doing great. It's very, very difficult, and I'm sure that will be quite a difficult one for Spurs fans because they probably won't want to see Chelsea doing well at all. Why would they? They're one of their rivals. So, and I'm sure Poch and his team would not expect Spurs fans to wish them well in that regard. Maybe you could wish them well just as long as they're below Tottenham. Maybe that's the way. I don't know. But anyway, enough of managers of other clubs. Back to Tottenham and the end of the season. We got there. It was such a classic Tottenham thing to do. To play quite well in a way. Do the job that's required of you. But do it so late that it really didn't make any difference whatsoever. It was such a strange match because the result meant nothing to either team in the end because of events elsewhere. Yeah, it's it was a strange game. The atmosphere was a strange one. It was a good atmosphere to start, and then Spurs kind of just killed it twice, scoring early on in both halves. Absolutely killed the atmosphere, especially in tandem with the news that was coming from elsewhere. I like Ellen Road. It's kind of a real old school ground. It's got that old vibe to it. But yeah, it never really got rocking or going, or you never really felt that belief. If anything, there was more anger towards the Leeds board, and you could see people, especially as the game wore on, getting more and more frustrated, and the players as well. People were singing, you're not fit to wear the shirt and stuff like that. So I never felt Spurs were out of control of the game. And what makes it more frustrating is that's their first win outside London since October when they beat Bournemouth away. Remember that comeback win? It feels like a lifetime ago. It's just too many things caught up with them. Too many missteps. Too many days when they didn't do the job that they had to do. Too many days when they crumbled. Too many days when they didn't show the mental fortitude they needed to in games. It all caught up with them. So in the end, it didn't matter what they did because Aston Villa, I think deservedly got that last European spot as well. And it now means that we face a season with Tottenham Hotspur not having European football for the first time since 2009. Long time ago. It's weird. We almost kind of take it for granted that Spurs are going to be in European places. We'll have a little chat later on about the, the pros and cons of European football and all of that. And there's both sides to look at it. Absolutely, there is. But yeah. Harry Kane. Just looked down at my notes and saw the name Harry Kane and just think 30 Premier League goals. He's such a wonderful thing amid such mediocrity. He really is. He's just, again, another thing we're going to talk about is Harry Kane and his future and what he's done and the more records that tumbled yesterday at Elland Road for him. And the problem for Leeds as well was that they were getting so desperate they were throwing people forward. And if it's one thing Tottenham actually like, it's you throwing men forward and leaving space in behind because they can counter you. They have become a counter-attacking side over recent years. It's kind of been drilled into them by the recent managers. It could have been an even bigger scoreline than 4-1. It could have they had a little bit more quality with some of their passing. Yeah, here's what Ryan Mason said afterwards. We had a job to do and all we could do was come here today and win the game in difficult circumstances. We did that and I think we were good value for it as well. We scored some really, really good goals but also defended our box really well, so I was pleased with today and how today went. Obviously, the bigger picture is disappointment over how the season has gone as a whole because we've finished outside of Europe for the first time in a long time. We need to make sure that doesn't happen again. And what I felt was really interesting about this lineup as well was that it was a Tottenham kind of stripped of a lot of its kind of the senior players that started the season at the club. I was thinking about it. You got no Lloris, no Højbjerg, no Dyer, no Bentancur, no Romero, no Perisic. None of those kind of older, say because Romero's obviously not old or Bentancur's not really that old, but I guess experienced people. There were a lot more. I guess it must have been an overall average age, must have been much younger. I would have thought so, especially the way they ended the game. And I just thought that was really interesting that, look, it was a game that was probably not the best way to judge how Tottenham should play or anything like this, but it definitely felt like a team that was younger was certainly no worse than what was being played when more experienced players were playing. And if anything, again, some of the football was really good again, a bit like the Brentford first half. Did some nice little moves and things like that. And look, some of those players that I've just mentioned as well will have a big part going forward. Some of them may be heading off. I would say among those players I've just said, you would imagine Bentancur and Romero would be a big part of the future going forward. Lloris and Perisic probably you'd think would go this summer. Højbjerg and Dyer, I think we'll have to see. Højbjerg, I'd imagine, would be sticking around unless there's a really good offer for him elsewhere or the new manager doesn't want him. Dyer, I think we're at that kind of crossroads where we have to see what happens next with him. Obviously, he's coming into this final... is it the final 12 months as well? Is he? I think he's 2024 as well, isn't he? With his contract. So, yeah, that's kind of decision time really with him. But I just thought it was interesting because... I hate to mention him again, but I kind of have to because of the context here. Back in 2014, when he came along, Poch, obviously, you remember very well, for those first 3 months or 4 months of the season, struggled along with a lot of the previous players, cliques within the club as well. And he just got to that point where I think, was it the Villa match or just after maybe, when he just thought, right, I'm going to end up getting sacked here because this isn't the kind of squad that I want to be working with. And he essentially really ripped the core out of it and had this much younger, spine, hungrier, yeah, that's the best way to put it, it's hungrier kind of youth spine throughout the team. Less ego, more pride in wearing the shirt. And of course, yes, it's ironic that now he is at Chelsea, and it's actually at a time when obviously there's so many of those faces still within the squad that were there back then that he transformed it in, 9 years ago, almost 9 years ago. Where has that gone? I just thought it's interesting that we're now at the next stage of the cycle where that all needs to happen again. And they actually, like I say, they ended the game with such a lot of youth on there. Mason gave... Well, let's just put it this way. They had a 17-year-old alongside two 20-year-olds in the midfield because Mason had debuts to George Abbott, which is massive for him, under-18 player. Matthew Craig, who's had a brilliant season for the under-21s. And obviously they were playing alongside Pape Matar at the end, who actually I thought had another... I'm going to talk about him briefly in a little bit. Really positive little cameo from Sarr as well. He's going to be such a talent. I do think he's been underused this season. I do think there's a lot more... time he could have been given far more minutes, because I think there's a real quality composed player in there as well. And you've heard me saying about Højbjerg and Skip being too similar. I do think he would have provided something different to both of those as well. Like I say, it was only a few minutes towards the end, but I did feel that there was a little bit of a vibe for me of, while I'm... How do I put this? I don't want to give... No, that's not right. I want to put this in the right terms. Actually, let's just say it straight as it is. So, it gave me the vibes of the Tim Sherwood end of his era. I am not comparing Ryan Mason and Tim Sherwood whatsoever. I think very, very different kind of coaches, very different philosophies, very different kind of ways of looking at it. I think Tim Sherwood maybe more old school, maybe kind of that Redknapp kind of ilk, that not saying it's better or worse, just saying it's different, more the old school way of looking at things. Whereas Mason, I feel, is more the modern kind of young manager. Look, I guess he's a disciple of Poch, so yeah, different kind of people. But what I found similar was blooding those young players for whoever came next will benefit from them, and that's what I think will happen with what Mason's done there. Giving some of those, obviously in Sherwood's time, the main one was Harry Kane, of course, who obviously Pochettino would then turn to with more regularity and help him become the striker he has become. And I kind of asked Mason about that afterwards, about the youth and bringing those young players on towards the end for their debuts, but also, is it time for Spurs to maybe return to that? Return to the younger, hungrier dynamic that they had before. Obviously, you've got that quandary of wanting to win stuff and having this ultra-successful, world-beating team, but also the road Spurs were heading on did feel like it was going there with the younger players under Poch, but obviously just wasn't supplemented or replenished enough with the little elements of star players you need in there, which, Arsenal, I do think, have taken on that little bit step further and done it properly in a way. Obviously didn't win the league this year, but you know they're very well set up for next year. So I asked Mason about it, and he said, well, I think obviously that period under Pochettino, we were quite fortunate because we had some outstanding young players. He said, I'm taking myself out of that as I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but we had Harry Kane, Andros Townsend, Alex Pritchard, Adam Smith. I could name so many players that went on to play in the Premier League and had incredible careers. But what I would say, the most important thing is to have people who have energy, who feel that pride to wear this shirt. Those two lads that came on, I said to them afterwards that they are an example of what an academy player should look like in terms of the work rate. I've been in the academy. I know both of them very well, and that's not a gift for either of them. That's hard work, consistently every day doing it right. So they deserve that moment. And I really value young players in any squad, because when you've got a player that feels the club and knows what it's like to represent the football club, it can be powerful. And that's it. Look, Spurs need to change. There's no getting away from it. They finished 11 points worse off than they did last season. So, change needs to happen. And I just feel like it wouldn't be the worst thing, especially with European football now being off the table, to streamline that squad, make it a hungrier squad, and have kind of youth supplementing it as well, to be able to be brought in. Again, you're torn in all directions, because there will be fans on social media who will be saying, oh, look at the state of our squad, how deep, it's not as deep compared to these other squads. All these other squads have got 2-3 amazing players in every position. But the thing is Spurs are going to have so few fixtures next season compared to these other teams, and they're going to you're not going to be able to keep a big squad happy. It's going to be one of those summers, I feel, where everyone's going to kind of be maybe sniping at each other again, as football fans, I guess, do. But you've kind of got to look at it and look at the reality, I think, of it and how it's going to work. Because I don't think this is going to be the same as previous seasons on a lot of levels. But it may end up being for the better. It may be one of these where you take a couple of steps back. Mason, I think, was in Friday's press conference. I would urge you to watch it. It was a really good, in-depth look into the club, Ryan Mason did. He spoke very well. And one of the things he said was, if you're going to take anything from this season, it is that it needs to be a lesson. It needs to be something that makes the football club better because of what comes from it and the changes that are made. Again, can talk about Ryan Mason towards the end. But yeah, I would, if you can if there's any way to watch that, I'm sure Spurs must have it. And then I put out the stuff from the later embargo section. Yeah, honestly, it's all worth looking at. He's a very intelligent chap, is Ryan, and we'll talk about him in more depth, because there's different sides to him, and I want to kind of address some of the different aspects to Ryan Mason. But there were some bright spots, got to be said as well, and I think bright spots that you can cling on to and take into next season. One for me was Yves Bissouma. I thought Yves Bissouma was fantastic, actually. I thought he was really dominant in a lot of what he did. He has come back and really shown what he can be next season. Let's be honest, there was a lot of us that kind of did feel that he was coming in as one of the best Premier League midfielders in the last few years from Brighton, yet we were not being able to see the version of him that he would have wanted to be. There's no slight on Conte. It's more saying that maybe it's a recruitment thing, that Conte's system is very regimented and it deals very much in repetition. You've got to do this, you've got to do this, you've got to do this. You've got to know exactly what you're doing in this situation. You've got to be in this position. You've got to pass here, be here when you move. And everyone knows their positions, and when it works, it's fantastic. But what I would say with someone like Bissouma, he kind of feels more to me like this marauding, not quite off the cuff, but someone that likes to just feel the game and that sort of thing. And that's why I think he's had so much success with Brighton in recent years. And to then suddenly chuck him into this regimented system almost felt like you were limiting his capabilities. And, you know, we saw it quite publicly. Conte clearly wasn't entirely impressed with what he had to begin with, because he was criticising his inability. Well, I say criticising. He publicly said that he was struggling to take on the tactical instructions a little bit. He was a little bit slower in doing so than other players, and he also said he had to improve his defending a lot. It's a difficult one because, again, this is what I think is another thing that needs to be highlighted about how poor Spurs have been in recent years. Is this, not only are they crowbarring managers into the club, but they've also been crowbarring players into those managers' systems and philosophies and squads, and it hasn't worked. And I just feel like we've seen in recent weeks, Bissouma's come back and he's like, oh, where's Conte? And you can probably imagine he's probably like, yes, when he's realised he's gone, because I think he's looked a player transformed under Mason. He's come on and he's looked, I think the one game I can remember for Conte where he really looked good was against Liverpool. And I feel like we've seen more of those performances since. He's looked very happy to kind of just be Yves Bissouma again. And yeah, I thought he was one of the better players on the pitch yesterday. I've got his stats here somewhere. He had a pass success rate of 94.9%. He, in his own half, made 3 tackles, 3 interceptions, 3 clearances, and he blocked 1 shot as well. He used the ball really well, hence that success rate with his passing. And, you know, don't forget, this guy had a stress fracture in his left ankle. He's been out for 3 months and he's come back looking sharper than he did before he went, I'll be honest with you. And I do wonder, it's difficult. I was about to say, I do wonder if he hadn't got that injury, how Spurs would have fared in the second half of the season with him playing more games. I still stress 100% that I think Højbjerg and Skip are too similar to really form a partnership that you can use repetitively. Certainly in some games it can work, but I do wonder whether Bissouma in there in the mix would have been different, but then it would have been under Conte, and then Stellini, who obviously was very Conte-like. But I'm really happy for Bissouma. And I do feel, like I said, with the difference in styles, I actually felt Skip has kind of looked better in recent games. I know he's had a couple of mistakes. He had the one against Brentford, of course, later on. And yesterday some of his passing was a little bit iffy, but I do feel in his game itself, he looks that little bit better. I think maybe it's just a case of knowing what his role is, or being in his more favoured role. Whereas with Højbjerg, maybe they're constantly flitting between doing the same things and having to take on different tasks that they wouldn't normally. I think I've got Skippy's stats here. He actually, all of his stats were better than Bissouma's in terms of... Sorry, no, he had 3 in each column that I just said, but he also had 1 extra tackle. He made 4 and he added on a key pass as well. But what I was saying about not using the ball as well, his pass success rate was far lower, 71.7%, which only Porro had worse than the starting outfield players. You know, it's one of those where you maybe can't read too much into it, because you could say maybe he was trying more risky passing. But I also did think he gave the ball away a few times, just kind of hoofing it forward rather than just taking that little beat and being composed. But, you know, you forget, he's going to be playing for the England under-21s this summer at the Euros. This is still a very young player who's actually got a lot of Premier League experience now as well. I'm not on the let's bash Skippy train at all. You know I like Oliver Skipp. You know I think he's got a lot of talent in him, and I just feel he's one of those where you kind of look at the level where he's at now, and he's nowhere near his peak yet. You're not going to peak at that age, and get a good progressive manager that wants to get even more out of him. I don't think it's any coincidence that all of the managers that have worked with him have tried to use him in different ways and tried to develop him. It may be one of those that maybe another loan does help him if it looks like he's not going to get regular football. It's interesting because Bentancur obviously is probably not going to be back for the first month or two of the season unless he makes huge strides. So you would imagine it would be difficult to loan out Skipp at that point. Maybe a January thing. Because like I say, it's going to be less fixtures. Is going to be less rotation required. We'll see with Skipp. But I still have big hopes for his career. But sorry, I was talking about Basuma. I got side-skipped. I don't know. Basuma was really good, really good. And I saw his Instagram post. It was very much kind of think looking forward to next season and get the right manager in. Who knows? With Graham Potter back in his life at this rate. And we certainly know that he would get the best out of him and he could really go on to star next season. So that's a positive I'm taking from the game as well. Another one for me I felt was Porro, Pedro Porro. Look, there would have been, I think, growing concerns of like, oh, pants, we've bought a right wing back for a manager who played with a back three and wing backs. We might not have back three and wing backs next season. Ooh, and I don't think he can really play right back. Which again, huge failing of the club there. We knew Conte was going. Everyone knew Conte was not going to last out, not going to see another season at Spurs. So that was a big commitment to buy a player who will cost 40 million. Is it next month to buy permanently when you may not play with wing backs? So I think there will have probably been a whew in recent weeks when actually, especially yesterday, I felt Pedro Porro showed that he could be a winger in the future. I was looking at his stats as well. So in his past six matches, he's had 4 direct goal involvements. So 4 in 6, 2 goals, 2 assists. Has made it 3 goals and 3 assists in his 15 Premier League appearances so far. In total this season, he's got 14 assists and 6 goals to his name for Spurs and Sporting. That's a total most wingers would be very happy with. So yeah, I do see, and bear in mind he is only 23. Again, we've seen players go the other way. We've seen Perisic be a winger who's come back into a wing back. But maybe Porro goes the other way because as soon as we saw the formation, we're like, oh, okay, he is. He's going to be the guy on the right of that 3 behind the striker, behind Kane. And I thought he played really well. Early on, you had a really nice run inside that he made. Very good movement. Emerson picked him out with a good ball. Plays into Sonny, who showed lovely awareness to see Kane running alongside him, unmarked, puts the ball in the net. So, involved in the first goal. Second goal, of course, ran on like a bit of a striker. Kane's pass was horrendous defending, kind of bodged it up. And I don't even think Kane got the assist because essentially the defender kind of hoofed it on into Porro's path. But what Porro did was took it on and took a finish into that bottom left corner that Kane would have been very proud of. It was a lovely striker's finish. So again, all leading into this, I feel like he could be a winger because he's a guy that can put in a cross. And he's shown he can finish very well as well. He had a couple of cracking finishes, actually, hasn't he, in recent weeks? And then he returned a compliment to Kane, put Kane through for the lovely third goal as well. So, yeah, that gave me a lot of hope about Porro. And I actually asked Mason in the press conference about him. I said, do you think he can play as a winger? Could that be a future kind of spot for him? And he said, possibly, yeah, because he affects games of football. He scores and creates goals. I thought today his performance was excellent going forward, and also he had a discipline in helping the team from a defensive point of view. We're very pleased with his impact. We know it's very difficult to come into the Premier League halfway through the season. I think his character and his personality have allowed him to be some sort of success. I think that's fair, some sort of success. I wouldn't say it's been an absolutely incredible success, not like Kulusevski and Bentancur were last season, but I think there's been progress. And I think we always kind of do this where we get a little bit over the top maybe about new signings and, this is not going to work. And you forget that, especially ones coming in from a very different league, foreign players, they have to adapt. And I don't think you can underestimate how important a full pre-season under the next manager will be for Pedro Porro to understand exactly what they want. And also, maybe a bit like Lucas Moura back when he first arrived at Spurs. He didn't pull up any trees in his first 6 months, but that kind of just helped him for the next season. Almost that was his bedding in process, that first 6 months. And maybe that's going to be the same for Porro as well. There's definitely some gains I can see there as well. And again, he and Basuma, I think this will be a platform for them to build on for next season as well. And I think Sarr too. Sarr technically gets the assist for Lucas Moura's goal. I noticed that. It's a little bit like Jan Vertonghen's assist for Son's Puskas goal in that Puskas winning goal that didn't really play a major part in the goal, but hey, counts as an assist. But yeah, Sarr, another one who you get the right manager in there. I just pray they get a manager who's good with young players, because that's the thing. When you look at those players in there, you've got Sarr, you got Porro, who's a young player, you got Skip, you got Kulusevski, who, hopefully is still coming to the club. Certainly the expectation still seems to be within Spurs that he's coming, but obviously you've been reading the reports that are coming out of Italy of them thinking he might be going back. Unless Spurs are just waiting to see the director of football and manager first to say, do you definitely want Decky? Personally, I think it'd be mad not to. I think it'd be an incredibly daft decision not to, because let's be honest, in whatever formation I think someone's going to come in and play, I think he fits it. He's that versatile. And for me, 30 million for a player like Decky, 23 years old, he's 22, 23, who, again, like I say, the other young players, is not anywhere near his peak yet. Yeah, he's had a second season syndrome where he's just kind of had to adapt and people have known his game a bit more. He's an incredible young player with amazing amounts of potential. And I hope no one is giving up on him after just, some iffy months. He very much will adapt and learn. He's an incredibly determined guy. So yeah, if Spurs do decide not to take that deal, that would be madness for me. I think you'll see him go somewhere else and be a star. I know I will obviously, and I said it in the last video about not making decisions on players, when you've already got, when you haven't got your manager or director of football in place. But for me, I just think it's a no-brainer with Kulusevski. I think he's a Tottenham player through and through. And there's an interview with him that will be coming out tomorrow lunchtime where he talks a little bit more about that after the game yesterday. I'd say slightly more positive in my point of view, but I can't really say anything about it, obviously, because it's all embargoed. But yeah, like I say, some good young players there as well. Don't forget Destiny Udogi's coming in as well. 20-year-old. He's another one like Porro. We're going to have to see now if it's someone that plays a back four, can he play as a left back? My thinking is he probably can. I know obviously I've seen coaches say it's one thing he does still have to improve on is his defending. But I do feel like maybe slightly less of the flying wing back that Porro is. Maybe is a little bit more somewhere in between. So it might be easier for him to become that left back rather than become a left winger. So him to add to the mix as well. So I do think it's really important this summer for a lot of those players and how they kind of push on the next steps, I guess, as well. Talking of pushing on, Harry Kane. We've got to talk about Harry Kane, the miracle man. I'm trying not to dwell too much on just how horrific Spurs season could have been without Harry Kane in this team. He just guarantees you a certain amount of goals and points. It really does. I look at the stats and his 30 Premier League goals, I still can't get my head around how anyone has scored 30 Premier League goals in this team. I still maintain, I don't even think Haaland would have scored 30 Premier League goals in this Tottenham team with the chances created. But Kane's goals are responsible for bringing in almost half of Spurs' 60 points this season. That's just terrifying how reliant they are on him. He's only got better and better, I feel, as the season's gone on as well. Since Spurs went out of the Champions League to AC Milan, Kane has scored 14 times for club and country in 14 games. The 2 goals on Sunday meant he became the first player first player in Premier League history, because Premier League is the only league that's ever existed, of course. Football did not exist before the Premier League, we know that. The first player to score 30 or more goals in 2 seasons in the Premier League. No one else has done it, which is incredible. It's just, honestly. And the irony is, both the occasions he scored 30 or more goals, I think it was 30 actually in both seasons, he hasn't won the Golden Boot. It was Salah won it the first time, and now Haaland. Ironically, because he's won the Golden Boot 3 times, and all of those were actually with lower tallies than he's managed this season. That's the way football works, isn't it? It's absolutely mad. Haaland managed obviously 36 Premier League goals, so he takes the boot. But Kane actually did have a better shot accuracy, 63% to Haaland's 56%. And also Kane's the first player to score in 26 different Premier League matches in a season. It's only 12 matches in the season he didn't score in the Premier League. And also, don't forget, this has been a season that's had the World Cup in the middle. Not only the World Cup and the knackering nature of it, but a World Cup in which obviously had that rubbish kind of moment for him, which could have been absolutely mentally draining for, I think, a lesser man. The missed penalty in the quarterfinal against France. Many people could have crumbled after that and really let it affect them. Kane is just such an incredible professional that he just took that and went, no, not letting that define me. And he's just gone about his season and been incredible. Mason said afterwards, I think he probably doesn't get the appreciation he should. The goals, yes, outstanding. A 30-goal season in the Premier League is incredible, but also his overall performances are just outstanding. And I also think as well, to go through what happened in the World Cup from a mental point of view, to come back and do what he's done for the past 4 or 5 months, I think it speaks volumes for the player and the person. I just felt the game yesterday absolutely summed up everything that's wonderful about Harry Kane. First goal was just his striker's instinct, an opportunistic run, ghosting into the box and no one picking him up, finishing perfectly. Second goal was a lovely curling. It was just such a world-class striker's finish around the keeper. Absolutely beautiful. And like I say, I know the pass to Porro was kind of almost cut out and still went through. But if you look at the early part of that move, when he does this little flick and turn and drive, and he just is effortless. He has so much time on the ball because his brain is about 5 steps ahead of everyone else. He's just such a good player. And he was talking after the game as well. He said this was his Spurs play interview. Today was about showing a bit of pride. Of course, we had the chance to go up a spot in the league. That didn't happen. But all in all, it's about fighting for the badge and fighting for the fans. I was going to say fighting for the vans. I don't know why. Fighting for the badge and fighting for the fans. I thought we did that. This is not an easy place to come, especially when they're in a relegation battle, fighting for every point. We showed great resilience today, and it was nice to send the away fans home happy. Struggling today, sorry. It was a late night last night. I did not get in until almost 2 in the morning in the end. About his goals, Kane said, it was great to reach that 30 goal mark. I felt really good this season. I felt really fit. Obviously, playing all 38 games in the league has been great as well. Overall, it's been a disappointing season. It's nice to keep the standards high when you're going through difficult times. Now I'm just looking forward to a little break. BT Sport asked him about his future. Of course, they were going to. He just straight batted it pretty much. This is what he said. That's part and parcel of being a footballer, especially when you're at the top of your game. I've just been focused on this season and trying to help the team as much as possible. To score a couple today was nice to finish this way. All in all, I'm just looking forward to a nice break and then a couple of games with England. I think it's really nice that he kind of feels that he's at the, he says when you're at the top of your game. And I think he is. He's a player, absolutely. We talk about peaks and those younger players. Kane at 29 years old, turns 30 this summer. He's at his peak. There's lots of communication from Kane. He put a post on social media afterwards. It goes without saying that the season didn't go how we wanted it to, but I can only thank the fans for their relentless support all year. There were some personal highlights that I'll always remember. Becoming the club's all-time leading goalscorer fills me with incredible pride. Time for some rest, England duty, and some family time. It was also a season when he became England's top all-time goal scorer, broke records galore. And do you know what I think is almost as important is that he's putting the injury things behind him. He really is. This was a third successive season when we haven't really spoken about injuries. Bearing in mind, I've seen some people, journalists, writing whole pieces about how Kane was essentially done. His body was finished. He was never going to be the same player again. But I was looking back over the last 3 years. He's missed just 3 Premier League matches since 2021. So the last 3 seasons of football. And even they weren't really together. I think it was 2 together and 1. I look back, the last time I could find that he was out for a while, was that thigh muscle. I think he ruptured his thigh muscle New Year's Day 2020. That was the last time he's missed more than 2 Premier League games in a row. Played every single one, like he said, this season. I just think it's incredible. The way he's, again, everything he does is about strengthening, improving. It's quite interesting that one of his heroes is Tom Brady. I think Tom Brady was the same before he retired as well. And that was why he had such a long career, was because he just kept looking to improve constantly in his body as well, and lengthening the amount of time that he could be at his peak for. And for Kane, we used to talk about his ankles being like so dodgy. And even now when we go down, we're still like, ugh, but actually, he must have strengthened the muscles around them and the ligament. I don't know how it works, but certainly feels like he's done something right. With the way he's doing it as well. Because he is, and it does make me chuckle because I remember at the time people writing him off, and I do a fair few journalists I know as well were saying that was it. The guy has, since then won Golden Boots, Playmaker Award, become the all-time top scorer for club and country, scored 30 Premier League goals in a season. If that's being finished and injury prone, hello, I really would love to be that finished and injury prone. It's incredible. And obviously he's 213, I think it's 280 goals for Spurs, 213 in the Premier League now, which obviously is only 47 behind Shearer. This is why I'm still seeing links with him going to like Real Madrid and stuff like that. And I would be stunned if at this point he goes, nah, maybe not. Unless there's a feeling maybe that he could do a season abroad or 2 and then come back. I don't know, but you would have thought you'd do it the other way around. You would at least try to get a record and then think. And also, I go back to his interview with Gary Neville when he was asked about going abroad, and he was very, very clear that's not something he's actually interested in. And it didn't sound like at this moment. It sounded very much that doesn't appeal to me. I personally, and I still believe this, that I think he will get to the end of his playing career, maybe not play too late, but play for a fair bit into his 30s, and then we'll go and try his arm at being an NFL kicker, or try his foot at being an NFL kicker. I think he'll go for that because he just loves NFL so much, and maybe get a little bit of a second career out of it. It's a tough gig, tough thing to break into, I think, as well. But if anyone can do it, you do think it could be him. And it's interesting because I've seen some pundits kind of pointing to Shearer as the example of like, well, Shearer stayed at Newcastle and tried to win trophies with them. Maybe Kane would want to do the same. What I would say is that Shearer, before he went to Newcastle, was a Premier League title winner, obviously with Blackburn. So it's a bit of a different kind of thing there. And look, Spurs fans will be hoping Kane breaks the Premier League record while at Spurs, because I think with 47 to get, that would be a remarkable season. I don't think it's probably going to happen next year. So if he does break the record while he's in a Spurs shirt, it will be because he's signed a new deal. And I think that's what, of course, we'd all love. I think, I've said this before, and it hasn't changed from what I can understand. The current feeling within the club is they're hoping they're probably going to, at least at the minimum, will get another year out of him, because I just feel that this summer, it's still too difficult for him to move, which sounds mad when he's only got 12 months left on his contract. But Spurs, there still seems to be no intention whatsoever to sell him. And I think it is just like I say before. I think the costs and risks of trying to replace him are too much. I think they are. I know people outside the club will constantly say, "Oh, but how can you give up maybe 80 million? How can you just give that up and just write it off?" Again, I say it again and again and again. I would pay 80 million. Well, not me because I don't have it, but if I'm Spurs, I'd pay 80 million to have Kane next season, because I think you splash out 80 million nowadays, that doesn't get you a striker anywhere near his quality, let alone you'd have to buy a striker and a playmaker to replicate, well, in an ideal world, replicate what he does. And I don't think there's any guarantee that would work at all. And it's interesting that Ryan Mason in the week spoke about a succession plan for players as well as staff. And that is something that has not happened at Spurs. They've never really planned for Kane's departure. They never have. And that's why we're kind of staring into the abyss now of, if he does go, who comes in that's going to be anywhere near that standard? I don't think you can do a straight replacement. I think it does have to be two players. And then Spurs' history of replacing big players that have sold for a lot of money is rubbish. Let's be honest. It is rubbish. And for Kane, obviously, once he gets through the summer, it kind of feels like there is a bit less tension compared to the 2021 when clearly he did want to go to City. Maybe that is because he probably feels like, okay, well, maybe I'll do a swan song at Spurs, and then all that power is in my hands. I can do what I want then. Here's one theory for you. Maybe not the summer of 2024, maybe Haaland goes to Real Madrid. Maybe there is a spot at City then for him if they want, when he's 31. And I very much doubt his skills will have diminished at all. Maybe he gets a second chance. Maybe in a world of horror, a certain Mauricio Pochettino says, "Want to come to Chelsea and play for me?" Oh my God, I don't think I could handle that. Pochettino and Kane at Chelsea would be absolutely horrendous, because I'm sure Pochettino would love him there this summer, but my goodness, the price tag that Spurs would put on, if they even did put a price tag on him. It's an interesting one. Would Kane move to Chelsea? Is it just another job? Would he do it? I don't know. But again, as I said before, if they can get another 12 months out of him, then that is buying them 12 months more time to try to desperately give him whatever they can to convince him to stay. Ultimately, the best thing Spurs can do to try and keep Harry Kane right now is to get this head coach and director of football appointment right. Convince him that actually there could be something exciting here. Don't give him just some meh. I'm so sorry to keep chucking him in there, especially as after he's won a league title this week. But Nuno, don't give him another Nuno where Harry looks at that and just thinks, right, great, fantastic, yeah. Okay, anyway, I'm going that way. It's just, there's no coincidence that 2021 summer he was absolutely obviously not publicly, but clearly had no real intention of sticking around for the Nuno revolution. And it was only when Conte came along, really, that you could see he started to feel like, oh, thank God for that, we're actually serious again. But yeah, and again, I look at it and I see United. I see, they have Champions League football. That is something that he deserves to be playing. But I still don't think they guarantee him silverware. I don't. I know they've got silverware this season and they could potentially get the FA Cup as well. But you can never say. I think probably City is the only club you can say right now you're probably 100% guaranteed to end up with some kind of silverware at the end of the season. I wouldn't say United from Spurs is a sideways move by any means. I still think, United are on more of an upward trajectory than Spurs are. Of course they are. They've definitely shown improvements under Ten Hag as well. But, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if right now that's the move. It could be that they're even better in 12 months' time and they become the perfect option for him in 12 months. But yeah. Kane needs to kind of rest up now. Who knows? He may go away, have a holiday. I don't know where he's going away with Ryan Mason again. He could do. I think they often do summer together. It may be that he goes away with England, talks to these City players that having a wonderful season, potentially doing a treble, and he thinks to himself, I do want to go now. I do actually. But whether that's something that can actually happen is a whole other thing. Or whether he just resigns himself to next summer. And we get a swan song year. In an ideal world, it's more than that. In an ideal world, he's convinced at Spurs that things are going in the right direction and that he can do something. We'll see. We'll see. I would love to see another 12 months of Harry Kane and Tottenham shirt, let's be honest. I think we all would. I'd love to see much more. But talking about players who are definitely heading out the door, Lucas Moura. Just want to touch on him quickly. What a lovely moment for him. If you could have written a script for his way to go out of the club, that was it. It was such a Lucas Moura move. It was one of those we've seen him try so many times, and often a player like the second or third defender will get their foot in the way. But no, Leeds beautifully fell for it, and it was lovely. He dribbled past 3 challenges, dinked the ball in the goal, and it was lovely. And I loved the reaction. We could see the dugout. We saw them all just spill out. Pedro Porro, Richarlison, Emerson leading the way. All went up the touchline to the travelling fans, who were brilliant again. Bearing in mind they had nothing really to get excited about other than little moments like that. They were brilliant throughout. They were singing all their chants. They were chanting Levy out as well, singing their various ones with him, and still very boisterous on the train home as well. And yeah, all the players went mad. Lucas got hoisted up on some shoulders in front of the fans. It was a brilliant moment. On a day when not too much mattered, that was a moment I think mattered. And it was really nice for him. He's had a proper farewell tour this week. I told you, I think in the last video, about him coming in and shaking hands with us all, and all the ones that were there at that point for the press conference, saying thanks for all your coverage, even when you criticised me, which fair play. And yeah, I think that's pretty much what he's been doing around the building, saying goodbye to lots and lots of different people. Yeah, and then that was a good way for him to sign off. He went up to the fans, because obviously it was pretty much the last kick of the game. I think they barely pretty much kicked off, and then the whistle blew, and he went back over to the fans, and they were singing "There's Only One Lucas Moura," tears in his eyes. That man, he needs a lot of the liquid replenishment, because he cries a lot. He's an emotional chap. He wears his heart on his sleeve, and it is lovely to see. Yeah, he's... I've got some quotes here. Oh, it was Mason. Actually, I asked Mason about it as well, actually. He said he deserved it. It's probably the kind of moment he would have been dreaming of last night, and thankfully he came on. He was in a position where he could help the team. The goal itself was outstanding, and we're all very happy for him. Harry Kane said it was amazing for him. He stayed really professional in this moment. It's never easy when you're running down your contract and you're not sure what you're going to be doing, where you're going to be next year. He stayed professional, he kept working hard, and he's been ready for any opportunity. That was just proved today, and what a lovely goal to finish his Spurs career on. He was talking to the club. There's some more tonight, actually, going out from Lucas into after the game as well. But what he said to the club was, "What a way to finish my adventure here. I'm very happy. The last game on Saturday, the feeling was a bit strange because we lost the game and now we won and I scored. I was looking for this goal, my first goal of the season. It's been a tough season, and then I could score. I could help the team, and I could finish my adventure here in the best way. Thank you." And it's true, because let's be honest, it was a combination of a rubbish game, rubbish result on Saturday against Brentford, the club pathetically turning the music up to ridiculous decibels, so the players and the fans couldn't even interact anyway. He wasn't able to have a proper goodbye, so this was just a really nice little moment for him to sign off in front of the noisy travelling fans, and it was just another moment for Lucas Moura. He's a man of moments. He may not be a man of consistently top performances, but what you can not take away from him is that he's had big moments. We know the big one in Amsterdam, of course, but also he's done it at Old Trafford. I've seen him score big goals at the Etihad as well. At the Camp Nou, he scored a big goal. His career against Huddersfield as well. Was it a hat-trick against Huddersfield? But ultimately, yeah, he's a man for his moments. And it was put to him, Milesy in the club interview asked him afterwards, about being a man for moments. And he said, it's true. And I keep every one of these moments in my heart. It was great. It was special. 5.5 years, I will keep everything in my heart. I don't have the words to say how thankful I am, how grateful I am to have lived this adventure here. It's special, very special. I will miss everything. I will miss everyone. Every single day, every single teammate, I will miss it. It was great. Time for the next challenge, but I will be back to visit you and I will keep supporting Spurs forever. And of course, the debate will reign, I think, not only whether he should have played in the Champions League final, but also whether anyone really got the best out of him and whether he got the best out of himself, I think, at Spurs. I mean, you look at his stats, as he said, that strike on Sunday was his first goal of the season and it came in the last game of the season. I have always felt, and this is maybe what he says even when you criticise me, but I feel I was doing it from a good place whenever I criticise him, because I do feel his ability is far more than someone who's got 20 Premier League goals across 5 years, 152 appearances, and only 16 assists. I just feel he's better than that. And that's always been my issue with Lucas, is that he never was, in his words, a killer of a striker, but he also was never a creative winger. He kind of fell in this awkward in-between bit of a dribbler without an end product, maybe enough, and that's the sad thing, I think, in terms of that. But again, some wonderful moments, and I think he'll always remember them, and I think the Spurs fans will always remember. I think he'll be one of those who comes back to the club and is really loved in like 10, 20, 30 years time when he comes back. Fans are going to remember those big nights, and one in particular, of course. It was one of the best nights probably we've ever had as fans and as a journalist myself as well. It was absolutely incredible. So thank you very much for that, Lucas Moura. Not that you're watching this, but thank you very much. Time to look forward. Time to look to the future. Lucas Moura, unfortunately, is the past. Now we're going to look at the future. And for me, Ryan Mason signed off on Sunday with the air of a man who knows what he has achieved inside Tottenham Hotspur, even if it might not be apparent on the outside. Look, the expectation is he's probably not going to get the permanent role. I think there's a feeling of that within the club, and I get the kind of sense I think he knows that as well. But there's high hopes within that he will be in a position to return one day to have that job. It's a job that he clearly dreams of. And genuinely, I do think he gets such an unnecessary amount of criticism and almost hate, because I think there's a lot of people angry at the club and there's a lot of people angry at Daniel Levy and the board and Enoch, everything. And I think, unfortunately, Ryan Mason gets lumped into that. I think he gets seen as part of the problem, which is that expression that's used. And I don't think it's fair. I think if you do that, you're in danger of ignoring someone I think is going to be a very talented young coach. I think he is already. Look, everyone I've spoken to inside the club, and this is in various departments, is people with no skin in the game. It doesn't matter to them whether, they're not mates with Ryan Mason. It's not like, we wanted to get it, It's not that they need him to get the job or anything, or they're looking to put a positive spin on anything to do with Ryan Mason. But I have spoken to so many people in different departments, and they all say the same thing, that he has put so many things in place just in the last few weeks that will really help the next manager kick on. It will make the transition for them much easier than what it would have been had they been taking straight over from, let's say, the Antonio Conte era. From what I understand, he's really gone about improving the environment, bringing departments closer together that maybe felt neglected and not part of things before. Just generally getting everyone pulling in the same direction as well. And essentially, and he's a strong character as well. Anyone that he feels is not devoted to turning around Tottenham Hotspur. He is very much just been like, right, okay, away. You're not part of this. No, he won't. You know, the expression, won't suffer fools gladly. He won't suffer anyone gladly that doesn't want the best for Tottenham Hotspur, that are maybe looking towards their own agenda themselves. And yeah, he's a strong character. He's just quite a strong leader as well. And from what I understand, again, because I'm always wary of saying these things, because like when you get the aggregators will take little bits and pieces out from what I've said, and they'll say, oh, Gold wants Mason to get the job. Oh, he wants, this Levy's puppet Mason. He wants him in there or whatever. I don't think Mason's going to get it. I don't. And I've said myself, I'm not entirely sure the timing is right for Mason. I think, unfortunately, the job might end up eating him alive right now, because I still don't believe in the likes of Daniel Levy to have the patience required for a young manager to really see it through, unless they get very quick results, which is sad. And I do think it's always going to be a constant undermining of what happens at Tottenham. I saw an interesting tweet earlier that I do wonder, it's something that if Daniel Levy doesn't truly step away this summer in terms of allowing Scott Munn and other people to really take more of a control of football decisions, can it ever be a young head coach's project, or will it always be Daniel Levy's project? I thought that was a really interesting tweet. But yeah, so Mason. So I'm not saying Mason for the job. That's not what I'm saying. But everything I'm telling you is what I've been told by people around who, again, have no benefit to saying these things. It doesn't really matter to them. But what I've been told is that there are a lot of players that would play for Harry Kane, play for maybe one day player manager, but would play for Ryan Mason, that would be very happy if he was manager. And I'm sure Harry Kane is probably one of them as well. I do think people really underestimate just how top a young coach he's going to be. I'm going to say it now. It's going to be one of these you can look back on. I think he's going to go away and become very successful elsewhere, and we're all going to be saying, surely it's a matter of time that he comes back to be Tottenham coach. I hope that's true. Please be true, because otherwise it's just one of those moments when people go, Muppet. But I do truly believe it, not only from what I see and the conversations I've had with him and what I hear from other people that spend kind of every single day working with him. I just see someone that is... Often you find that, don't you, though? The players whose careers have ended prematurely, they throw themselves into being a coach and understanding philosophies and football and studying it to this ridiculous degree, and they end up being among the best. And I think Eddie Howe's another great example. We're seeing someone like that whose career ended that little bit earlier as well. And yeah, I've got massively high hopes for Ryan Mason. And I don't like it when I see people just slating him because of this or that. I think he's had to deal with a lot more behind the scenes than people realise, with a difficult uncertainty as well. I think a difficult squad that was not set up for his style of football. His style of football is a 4-2-3-1. It is. It's a very different attacking kind of football. It's the football, let's be honest, that we kind of want to see more of. But it was a squad that was built for someone that doesn't play that football. And obviously he's inherited all of those injuries as well to deal with. And I think, do you know what? With the short amount of time he had, we've actually probably had some of the better performances this season. I think despite the defensive atrociousness that kind of spilled into the United and Liverpool results and the previous ones, I do think some of the football was wonderful. I think the first half against Brentford was wonderful. I think a lot of the football yesterday was superb. So I do think there's such a good coach there. I do. I asked him kind of, how do you look back on this now? Now you've done, how do you look back on this spell in charge? And he said, it was not even a hesitation. He straight away said, when I go on my summer holidays, I would hope and expect that everyone inside our training ground knows who I am, who my team is, and what we stand for. The hope and expectation is that you guys and everyone else sees that too. I know we've done a great job. I really do. The circumstances were very difficult. I think anyone in the world coming into this situation for 6 games, coming off the back of what had happened and the position we were in, was going to find it tough. Also, if you add into that being on an interim basis where there's uncertainty, it makes it even tougher. But we've stuck to what we believe in. We've transitioned a little bit, I believe, in a short space of time, and the players have responded. They've given us everything. Ultimately, that's all I can ask. And I'd like to think, I think he's reformed his coaching staff. I'd be intrigued to see where Matthew Wells, who was with Scott Parker previously, I wonder whether he will now be Mason's number 2 going forward. Because I know that there's been that other clubs have looked at him in recent years. And I think this stint now, and what people will say, anyone that asks people within Spurs are going to get back such a glowing recommendation of him. And I think he will interview incredibly well. That's what I've noticed about him. I felt maybe in his first spell, he was only 29, and he was saying a lot of things that I think, not that he was told to say, but he was media briefed very well on how to deal with difficult subjects. Look, he was thrown in there with all the Super League fiasco, wasn't he, and everything. Whereas I feel this year, 2 years on, I feel like we've really seen the real Ryan Mason, and we've seen him be very honest, very intelligent in the way he's spoken about things, and delivered a lot of truths as well, a lot of home truths. And I think if he takes that into his interviews that he will do at various clubs, I have no doubt that in the coming months he will be interviewed for positions. You'd imagine probably Championship would be a good level for him to start, a bit like Vincent Kompany's down at Burnley. I know that wasn't his start, but you know what I mean. And I think he will interview very well. He will be able to put his point across very clearly, and his style of football will be very attractive to people. And his idea of creating a culture and a philosophy within the club, I think, will be a very appealing one as well. I do think, funny enough, that he would fit in very well with someone like a Swansea. I think he's that kind of manager. I think he's very going to be an exciting kind of member of the new batch of coaches coming through as well. I do. And I think he's balanced the need to be, let's be honest, he was always going to be respectful of the club. He was always not going to burn the bridges with the owners because, let's be honest, he wanted the job. It's not rocket science. Of course he wanted a job. And I know that he did in the written section we put out late on Friday night. Yes, he was defending Levy. He said something like he feels that, he has been let down by some other people at times. And, there definitely is elements of truth to that. There's players he's bought for certain managers that have obviously ended up being flops or failures. There's managers he's appointed that maybe looked like great ideas at the time, but ended up not being. But don't get me wrong, Daniel Levy has made all of his own mistakes as well. And there's been a lot of decisions that have been iffy ones. So, yeah, I do feel there's an aspect of course, he's got to defend the person that he would like to employ him. But I would also say with Ryan Mason, I think maybe people haven't really delved into this enough and seen it. But he's actually been quite critical about the way the club has been run from the very top as well. He's been very critical about the stuff that I've been saying about the club lurching from one kind of style to the next and not really having any identity plan or idea what it's doing. And I'm sorry, if you don't think that that's a criticism of Daniel Levy, indirectly, what is that idea, that identity philosophy comes from the top. So to kind of claim that Mason is like a Levy puppet, whatever these silly phrases that you see on the internet, I don't think that's the case, because if you read what he's saying, he's very clearly criticising what's been done at the club by those who are in control of it. I've got some quotes here. Because I really feel that I think Levy especially could do a lot worse than listening to a lot of what Ryan Mason said and putting it into practice. He's a very clever young man. He really is. Here's some quotes as well. I think there's some huge decisions to make for the football club. First of all, it's to understand who we want to be and where we want to go going forward. Then it's realising who fits that. Members of staff and also players as well. It's an important few weeks now, and hopefully we make the right decisions. And when he was asked, what do you mean by the huge decisions? He said, well, a manager. And he started laughing. And he said, honestly, we need to understand where we want to go and who we want to be. And that's the most important thing. Once you decide that, then you can employ the people that fit that. And then I think everyone is quite clear on the direction we would like to go. We have quite a big squad. Whoever is in charge in pre-season, there are a lot of players and decisions to make. Ultimately, I think we need to get back to who we want to be, who our fans want us to be. And in going forward, we will have better results on a more consistent basis. And it was quite interesting. It was put to him, I think it was maybe Simon Stone from the BBC, put it to him that, should Spurs, they're 8th now, should they not be aiming for the best? And kind of Mason took that really interestingly. I felt, see what you think, but I felt that he took it in a managerial point of view. And this was his answer. I don't know what people think the best is, because the best isn't always necessarily the best option. The most important thing for any football club in world football is to have an identity. Know who you are and who you want to be and stick to that. Then I think you can employ people along the way, people who fit into something, as opposed to trying to make people fit into something and then compensating. I don't think that works. That's the key decision. That's the big decision. And that's the commitment that I think we need to make. For me, I could be wrong and putting words in his mouth. I think he's talking about Mourinho and Conte there. I think. He's actually, he hasn't kind of held back on Conte. I think he very much is appreciative of what he learned from him. But he's also been very clear that, maybe to defend himself, but at times, when they've said, your team's conceded a lot of goals or whatever, it's scored a fair few as well. He's very been quick to say, well, no, that was all happening before as well. And he hasn't worried about kind of holding back on that front as well. It'll be interesting to know what Conte thinks about that. But yeah, I do. Let me know again in the comments. Do you think there he's talking about, it's that key sentence, isn't it? Employ people along the way, people who fit into something, as opposed to trying to make people fit into something and compensating. I don't think that works. And I think that's what it is. I think that trying to crowbar Conte, maybe even more so than Mourinho, into the way Tottenham is, and it didn't work. Honestly, I would listen to him. He speaks a lot of sense. He does. And again, if you think that's a Levy puppet telling the club that they've made a right mess of the decisions, I don't know. I think there's a confusion over what a puppet is. It's a puppet. What was that? Brian? Oh God, Conley, wasn't it? Used to say that. That's one for the young crowd there. Not. So now we look forward to Tottenham Hotspur without European football this season. No European away days for us that do those trips for the fans and for us journalists. Even this year we had a good one, Marseille. That was fantastic with the late Højbjerg goal and everything. None of those this year. There's, like I said, there's downsides, there's upsides. Downsides, of course, financially less money coming in. No Champions League football this year. It is going to mean there's less of an allure to the club for new signings. There's no getting around it. There's no... Look, let's be honest, we're all a bit fanciful at the best of times when it comes to transfer windows. And why can't Spurs buy that £100 million player? Oh, they've let him go there. I do think fans are probably going to have to be even more realistic this summer, bearing in mind they can't even offer Champions League football, which is something that these top players will want. It could naturally force them into that habit of buying younger, hungrier players who more just wanting to move to a bigger club like Spurs, and Champions League isn't the be-all and end-all for them. And like I say, most of all, it's going to lead to a streamlined squad because it's going to be very little midweek football. What am I going to write about in the midweeks? Oh my goodness. But there's going to be no need for a massive group of players, less fixtures to hand out minutes. Like I say, you had a big squad with less matches. You've just got a really unhappy squad, all pulling in different directions, all looking out for themselves. Instead, you kind of go back to what Poch wanted, really, when he had, I say less fixtures. It was more just what Poch wanted anyway, which was a tighter, hungrier squad with less unhappy people and supplementing it with academy players. And I don't think that's the worst thing in the world to go anyway. Look, Spurs can't turn in any route to a trophy. The Conference League, whatever it was, I don't think Spurs are allowed to be fussy enough to say, no, you're right, we don't want that trophy. It's been so long since they've won nothing, they cannot do that. But they will now have these 3 full weeks to prepare players for fixtures. It shouldn't be lost the irony that was something that Antonio Conte was really good with. And he probably next season would have really benefited from that. But hey, that's football, that's life. And it's no coincidence that the clubs in recent years that have kind of overachieved have been the ones that haven't had European football to deal with. Obviously, Leicester in the year they won the league. Even Chelsea, I think, in Conte's year when he won the league, I know it's not overachieving, but they did so without any European football. Brighton this year, another good example of a club that didn't have the European football and have played some wonderful, marvellous football. Although it's quite interesting when you look at it that all the praise that has been lavished on De Zerbi's wonderful football, and deservedly as well, they still only finished 2 points ahead of Spurs this season. What are you like, what? It just shows you either one of two things, either that just the expectations of Spurs are much higher, or it just shows how much, I guess, Harry Kane guarantees you a base level of points. Just having one of the world's best players in your team naturally does that. So you can still look rubbish as a club, but he saves your backside so many times that you're only 2 points off a club that everyone is raving about. Funny, isn't it? Absolutely funny the way it all works. But look, I think Spurs now have to move quickly. I do think the events at Stamford Bridge and how, Chelsea the day after the season finished had their manager in place, their new manager. There's no real reason for Spurs to kind of spin this out for too long. They'll argue, and they could well say that they could say, I'm not saying this is what they're saying, but because of how this one happened further earlier in the season than it did last time, there is a little bit more time to play with until it gets towards pre-season stuff, but they do not want to be in that scenario like 2021 where they're bringing in a manager like a handful of days before pre-season starts and they're frantically trying to sort out their plans and the players have no real clarity whatsoever. It needs to get done. I think that's the aim. The aim is to get it done early in this post-season period so that they can get clarity for everyone involved. That's the plan. That's what I keep getting told is the aim. But it needs to happen. It does. Because, you can't have what you had with Nuno, who then went even 4 months into the season as well. They need a plan. They need something to work from, adhere to. Sake of the players, not only those who are there, but also players that are going to come into the club and who are going to head out of the club. There's so much to be sorted, and they don't have time to kind of just wait until the very end and then sort it all out. Need to move into overdrive now. Because, this was a really long, very long, difficult campaign. And next season has to be different. There's no bounds about it. They have to go in the right direction. At least being 8th, I think I did the question, didn't I, about finishing 7th or whatever, or 6th. But if you saw progress, would you be happy with it? That would actually be improvement. That would be progress now anyway, finishing above 8th. The one thing I would say about a mess is that it gives you the opportunity to clean up and change, make things better than they are. And that's what's now lies ahead for Spurs. They can clear up this mess that, they've created themselves, let's be honest. Daniel Levy has got to take responsibility for this mess. But now is the chance to clean it up and implement change and change for the better as well, because Spurs need to be better. They really do. There's no qualms about it. Levy needs to have some conviction on the direction he wants to go with the football club. And I say football club because that's what it's about. It's about the football. I know, it's all very well having your Beyonce concerts and the like, which it's all very well if the money is going back into the football club, that's fine. But ultimately your priority and the main thing should be that football club and improving it. So Levy needs to have conviction in the direction they're heading in, and he needs to back the people that he appoints to take them on that journey, take them in the direction they want to go of, regardless of whether there are a couple of backward steps in order to move forward. All of the top managers out there, I think Mason said this himself in maybe it was Friday's press conference, every top manager there has been that has achieved success at a club has had some missteps. There's been some little things that have not gone right, but those clubs have stuck with them and they have built something. Poch even had it at Spurs early on. But even the top ones, even Klopp, it wasn't an instant success for him. Spurs finished above Liverpool for years until Klopp really had some success. Alex Ferguson's obviously is always the best one. A great example as well. Even Pep, there were times when, even now they haven't won the Champions League and things like that. I know that's a minor quibble. But you know what I mean. On the whole, a lot of these managers have had to have some backward steps in order to move in the right direction and take the right path. Because, look, at the end of the day, Tottenham Hotspur have to make their fans believe in them again, because they don't right now. There's not a lot of trust. There's not a lot of belief in the club. No one really knows which way they're heading, which way they're going. I hate to use the drifting ship analogy again, but they need someone to grab hold of the... is it the tiller? I can't remember what it's called now, the ship. Anyway, the rudder. They're rudderless. They need to get that rudder controlling their direction, and they need to move. I don't know why I went nautical at the end. I didn't even want to go nautical at the end. But yeah, things need to change. They do. We'll see. I'm going to leave it there because it's quite a long one. I just really want to kind of discuss the end of the season, what comes next. We'll go into some real specifics in the weeks ahead, because I think I said this in the last video, I just have this feeling that within, these next, I'd say 2 weeks, we're going to see stuff really start to ramp up. I think it has to. I don't think that's me. I don't think it's rocket science. There's nothing there that's me going, incredible knowledge there, Gold. I think that is just logical that it has to ramp up in these next 2 weeks. They have to get a head coach and a director of football in place for everything to then become a very, very busy summer. For me as well, there's no hopes of me having people leaving very nice messages for me on social media of, have a great summer, have a great break. There's no break, there's no summer. I actually don't think I've got a holiday or anything until August. That's actually just into the season as well. There's too much to do. I'm too busy. Obviously got the tour as well next month. That's the thing with Spurs in pre-season. There's not a lot of time to kind of do holidays in amongst it, because there's so much to do. Hopefully lots of good stuff to report on. But yeah, I'm going to head off now and enjoy my Monday evening. I've got a lot of episodes of Succession to get through. I'm only in the 3rd series, and I'm trying desperately to stay away from the spoilers from this 4th series that is now finished. I'm loving it. It's such a good show. But yes, who will succeed at Tottenham? Who will be the natural line of succession at Tottenham Hotspur, on and off the pitch as well, in lots of different facets and lots of different departments. We've got so much to talk about this summer. We really have. There's going to be a lot for me to delve into. I think a lot of different departments, like I say, are going to be improved as well. There's going to be a lot of new names for me to talk about with you in different areas as well. At every level of the football club. Sound like Ryan Mason, he loves this football club. I feel like every manager I have, I listen to them so much and write so much about them. I start taking words that they use and put them into my everyday vernacular. There you go. Right, I am going to head off now. As always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves, and I shall catch you later. Goodbye.